non-statistical questions. Okay, so our goal for this lesson is to know the difference between statistical and non-statistical. And I've highlighted those vocabulary words that we're going to basically be camping out at for this lesson. Okay, so I want you to say those vocabulary words with me because I'm going to be using it a lot and it's hard to, really use the word and know what it's talking about if you don't know how to pronounce it. So that word it comes from the word statistics. The word is statistical. Say that. Statistical. And the other one is non-statistical. Okay. So this whole first unit is talking a lot about statistics and really what it is and how to understand it. So one of my students in my 1B class, when we did this first, statistic, he had a good way to understand it. So what statistics is where you take a lot of data that you collect. You collect tons and tons of data, whether it be from a survey or from sports, like a sports analysis. Their whole job is statistics, okay? They gather all of the data from athletes and then they organize it into some sort of graph or chart where they can understand it really quickly, like just be able to look at it and interpret it. And then they go on to their shows and talk about whether they're going to be an asset to their team that year, okay, based off their stats, okay? Farmers do it, okay, whether based off of how certain crops grow. They get all of those numbers pouring in, and then it helps them make decisions on their yield that year, okay? For me as a teacher, I use all of your grades. So I get all of your grades from all your assignments. And so if I were to teach a lesson and all of the grades that came in were like 50 and below, what does that tell me about what I need to do from there? Probably go back over it, okay, maybe see where the problem is, and then from there I can analyze all that and make a decision. So like when I was showing you that Edgelastic thing, the page that I saw, and it kind of had all those graphs, okay, that was organizing all of those stats, okay? So that's kind of what we're going to be doing is you're going to be able to, after this unit, collect data, put it into a graph, and then understand what it's saying, okay? Based off the graph. So that would be based from a statistical question, and then non-statistical would just be not being able to collect a lot of data from a question. So let's look at this first activity. Okay. This one says, which one doesn't belong? Okay, so we have 4 questions here, question A, B, C, and D. I'm going to give y'all about 2 minutes, and I want you to not just pick which one you don't think belongs. I kind of want you to compare each question to each other, okay? Maybe what do some questions have in common, which one kind of doesn't belong there, but also think, why doesn't it belong? And I don't want you to think of the specific questions that it's asking, like the answer you'll get, but like kind of how they all relate together, if that makes sense. So don't overthink it. Just read through the questions and think about why they don't belong. Okay, I'm going to put a timer on. Then we'll talk about it when the timer goes off. Ready, go. And make sure if you have one that you think doesn't belong, make sure you have an explanation of why it doesn't belong. You don't have to write it all out, but like a bullet point or something that you're ready to talk about. All right, let's look at it. Raise your hand if you think you know which one doesn't belong in this set. Jordan, what do you think?
I picked C and then I give my explanation.
Sure.
I said because the others ask for a total and D will give you a graph of what it's like that question.
Okay, so all of these would give you like a total amount, and what was the last part?
D will just like give you a graph.
Okay, so we can't get a lot of info from this question, is what I'm kind of gathering that you're saying. Okay, can't get a lot of info from this question. Good. All right, what else? Tyler, what do you think?
I said A is a certain type of chip.
A, because what?
It gives a certain chip.
Oh, because it gives potato chips. Okay. Very specific. All right. What else? What do y'all think? Anybody else have anything different? Do a lot of y'all think one of those two? Okay. So before we move on, I kind of want to point out a few things to you from what I noticed about these questions. So for A and B, did anyone else notice that it talked about how many or the number of? Yeah, so these are going to give you a total number. Okay, so in statistics, there's actually a word for that I want y'all to write down. This is going to be a type of question that would give you a numerical response. Okay, so that is a little vocab for you. Okay, those questions are going to give you a numerical response. Okay, and that's just easy because the word numerical looks like the word number. So numerical means the answer will be a number. Okay, now let's look at the other two questions. It says, what type of chips do students in this class prefer, or what type of chips are these? Okay, so if these questions are going to give us an answer that is going to be a number, these two questions are going to give us an answer that is a what? A type. Okay, so the vocabulary word for that is, it sounds scary, but it's not, it's categorical. Categorical. Okay, same for D, also categorical. Okay, and that sounds like a fancy word, but just think of like the word categories. Okay, so those are going to put your answers into categories like colors or chips or sodas, or so it's going to give you a word response that can be grouped into categories. Okay, going back to what our goal is to determine the difference between a statistical and a non-statistical question. Okay, so we have 4 different questions here. Now I want you to think about the responses that we would get. Okay, so question A, it says how many potato chips are in this bag of chips? Okay, if I had a bag of chips up here in my hands, okay, here, I'll give y'all an actual bag of chips. Okay. How many bags of chips? I don't know if y'all can see me. How many bags of chips or how many chips are in this bag? Okay. If I went around and asked every single person in this room, would y'all all give me the same answer? No. So this is going to be a question, like Jordan said, it's going to give us a bunch of different answers. Okay. It's going to give us different answers. Okay. Question B, it says, what is the typical number of chips in a bag of chips? Okay, so if you just had to guess just what the average is, which is what typical means, average, when you see that word.
They'll give you like the bag size usually.
No, they just like in, just one that you get from like a vending machine or something, or, like the bags that your family gets or whatever. If we went around and tried to guess how much the average amount of chips was in a bag, would we all give the same answer? No. So once again, this question would produce a lot of different answers. Okay. Question C said, if I said, what kind of chips are these? They're pretzels. Is there anything else that they are? No. So if I asked a bunch of people that question, are they going to give me a lot of different answers? No, they're going to give me the same answer over and over again. And that's kind of what Jordan was saying. You can't get a lot of info from this question. You're going to get the same thing over and over again. And then finally, what type of chips do students in this class prefer? Okay, if I went and asked every single one of y'all that question, are y'all all going to tell me the same answer? No. Some of y'all may have the same chip preference, but y'all aren't going to all have the same thing. So once again, this is going to produce a lot of different answers. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of similarities and differences about all of these questions. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So going back to our goal, a statistical question is a question that you can ask to large groups of people, and it's going to bring you in a lot of different answers. Okay. So A, B, and D, I would consider each one of those a statistical question. Okay. So it's so that you can gather in all that data to make graphs and to analyze and make interpretations about. Okay. Whereas a non-statistical question is one that it's not going to get you very far. Okay. What types of chips are these? That's not going to give you a lot of different data. Okay. So let's write those definitions down real quick. Okay, so I know that your page doesn't have this big blank white space like mine does, but just find some because this is the only part of this lesson we're doing. So just find some space to write some definitions, either on the bottom of the page or on the next page. It doesn't matter. We're not using the next page. Okay, so the first word is statistical question. A statistical question is a question that produces many numerical or categorical answers. All right, so real quick, we're going to talk about an example of a statistical question, okay? Based off the ones we just looked at, I want y'all to come up with your own. Someone raise your hand and tell me, and at home, if y'all just want to unmute yourselves, and if y'all have one that you can think of, what would be a good statistical question? Like if we went into the cafeteria and asked a bunch of people this question, it would produce a lot of different data. Hayden?
How many siblings?
How many siblings do you have? Okay, and what type of responses would that produce?
Numbers.
Numbers, which is called numerical. Okay, so it came up with a numerical question. Can someone come up with a categorical question that we could ask?
Can you do a question like, do you prefer this, like, give them like three, like, which do they prefer, like, say you say like, which food do you prefer, and say three different foods, would that work?
You could say, what's your favorite food? That would produce a lot of different answers. So, what is your, well, we could say, we could kind of narrow it down. What is your favorite lunch? Oops, kind of ran into the other one. And we said that would produce categorical data. All right, so does that make sense? Okay. And then finally, the other word, non-statistical question. Could y'all come up with your own definition based off the definition we said for statistical? If statistical means you get many different responses, you could get one or two responses, okay? So a question that only produces 1 to 2 responses. That do not vary. All right, do y'all know what the word vary means when it's spelled with an A? When I'm saying that they do not vary, that means they don't change, okay? They're all pretty much the same answer. The word vary, V-A-R-Y, comes from the word variety. So when you think of like there's a variety of options, you have a lot of different options, right? So if they do not vary, then there's not a lot of different things coming from it, okay? So if your questions do not vary, that means they stay the same. Okay, so let's come up with an example of a non-statistical question. What's a question that we could go around and ask someone that's not going to give us a lot of answers? Tyler, what do you think?
Where's the statue being?
Where's the Statue of Liberty? Is there only one correct answer to that question? Yes. Where is the Statue of Liberty? Question mark. Good. Can y'all think of one more? Hayden James?
What is 2 plus 2?
What is 2 plus 2? Good. So if you're asking a question where there can only be one response, then that is or 1 to 2, okay? Also, yes or no questions. Those are non-statistical. Like, do you like dogs? Yes or no, okay? That's not a statistical question because it's not going to produce a lot of different responses from it.
But like a true or false?
True or false would be non-statistical. Good. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Here, I'll close this down. Okay. And I'm recording this lesson, so once I post these back on to your Google Classrooms, always feel free, like if I show you something on the calculator and stuff and you forget when you're off doing your homework, just click on this video and just fast forward to the part I showed you on the calculator or whatever you need. Okay, last part is from this lesson, because that's the main part. If we go back to our goal, do we now know the difference between statistical and non-statistical questions? Yes. So our goal is achieved. Going to the last part of the lesson, I like to do the lesson summaries, just so you have something to go back to that sums it all up. We're on page 9 in your books. Okay, so the first part, statistics, which is what this whole unit's going to be about. We're slowly going to build into all the things that's important to know with statistics. It's about using all this data that we collect from our questions to solve problems or make decisions. All right, we did learn about 2 types of data. One of those was numerical data, which we said gives us a number response. Sorry, I want y'all to be able to see this. Okay, next we had categorical data, which expresses it using the characteristics of what you're talking about, favorite color, favorite vehicle, that kind of stuff. Okay, so then it says the question that you ask determines the type of data that you collect and whether or not there is variability. Okay, that's that word, like a variety. Okay, variability means that it's changing. Okay, so I circled it because that's an important word to know. In earlier grades, you learned that there is variability in a data set if all the values in the data set are not the same. These are examples of statistical questions. So if all the values are not the same, then it's statistical because they are answered by collecting data that has variability. Okay, so let's look here. Here are 2 examples of statistical questions. What is the average class size at this school? And what are the favorite colors of students in this class? Both good examples of statistical questions. That's what this says right here. It says statistical questions, if you want to write that in. Next, these are examples of non-statistical questions because they are answered by collecting data that does not vary, does not change. The answers will be one or the other. How many students are in the roster for this class? There's only one correct answer to that. Okay, it doesn't ask how many students were here today because that could change, but it asks how many are on the roster, which I think it's 16. There's only one correct answer. And what color is this marker? Yellow. There's no other answers to that. Okay. So that is lesson 1.